Okay, welcome to the Swing Trading with Cycles channel. We're going to do an update on crude oil today, and we're actually going to look at specific energy names. The theme of this video, and this is December 5th, it's a Monday, and it's just, the market's about to close actually, it's just after 3 o'clock. But the theme of this video is we're finally seeing a chink in the armor of energy names. We know that they've been doing really well, even though oil has been in a downtrend. And we now have very clear evidence that energy names as a whole are in weekly cycle decline. I tweeted about this. Definitely take a look at the link in the description if you're not following me on Twitter. Let's start with oil itself. And I mentioned this. We are on day 5 of a new daily cycle. We have a bearish outside daily candle. So we made a new high today and then came down and failed. Again, went red. The high so far has been day 3. And so it is very likely that this daily cycle has topped out on day 3. And we're now just going to descend. Lower lows and lower highs. And assuming we have a cycle that's around 30 days, we expect our low around like the middle of January. And for the weekly chart, that tells us that we're in weekly cycle decline for at least another 4 or 5 weeks to complete that daily cycle. And that would be week 10 of a new weekly cycle, having topped out on week 6. We talked about in the last video that this maybe was our weekly cycle low. It was a bullish outside weekly candle. It obviously pulled back pretty hard with this upper wick. And now this is essentially a bear flag that is in danger of breaking down. We're going to see if it actually does break down. All the evidence suggests that it will. And finally, on the monthly chart, it's another red month. It is very early. We've only traded a couple days in the month, but red so far. And just kind of continuing the downtrend, this being a lower high. And so not good news. Now let's look at some specific energy names. I talked about the idea that they're in weekly cycle decline. And if you're not familiar with cycles, definitely take a look at the description. There's links in there for written content I put together, several videos. There's not a lot of content on the internet about cycles in general, and so I put it all together, right? I think it's definitely a lot of stuff to consume. Ask questions if you have them, but let's go through. Let's look at what we're seeing in the weekly cycle. So let's start with Valero. So Valero has clearly made a weekly cycle top as of the week of November 21st. So it rallied for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. And now this is the second week, depending on how you think about it, or third week of the decline. And so so that means we're relatively early, right? We declined for 7 weeks. We're probably going to decline for at least another 7 weeks, probably to coincide with the drop in oil, even though this thing has been moving higher with oil this whole time. But we know that's how cycles work. That's how price action works. Nothing can go up in a straight line. And in this case, what a hideous double top. I mean, you can see the arrows drawn. You see this big drawdown. We try to recover all of it, and we just can't. So you could easily see us bottoming, the middle of January. And I would think probably somewhere in the 107 area, maybe even flirting with breaking 100. And the monthly chart is also red for Valero. Ooh, that's ugly. Yeesh. So we also have a monthly swing high on the board too. And again, that double top that we talked about. So by going below the low from November, and it's obviously really early in the month, but we've already gone below the low, that's really bad news. Again, that sets you up for a move, right? So same levels, the low for September was around 107. So that's the level that we spotted on the weekly. Basically, you could see a world where we're testing kind of these areas where you see this wick where buyers kind of came in, kind of a retest of that zone. Let's look through the other. Let's look at XLE because that's obviously going to give us a good bang for the buck. So this is our monthly chart. We haven't quite made a monthly swing high yet. We need to go trade below 87.29. And obviously, we would need to close a month below there to tell you we're really going much lower. But that sets us up for a move to 75. So that's like another $10 down. So what is that, like 12, 15%? Again, it's kind of a similar chart to like VLO where you have these wicks under here where buyers did step in. And on the weekly chart, you can see it's the same pattern. I won't belabor the point here. We had this potential high, and then we just consolidated inside the range for a couple weeks, and now this is the week where we're breaking down below that range. Now, it's only a Monday. We still have 4 trading days left. This candle could completely reverse, this weekly candle, and could actually close green. So that's another thing to be aware of. XLE opened the week at 91.20. So if we could find our way back up to 91.20, this would actually just become a nice green candle with a lower wick, and it would be actually quite bullish, right? Something like this, right? So that it's important to understand the bull case as well. But failing that, we're relatively early in a weekly cycle decline. And just to kind of give you some context, this was another weekly cycle decline. So after we got the high, we dropped for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And every weekly cycle isn't going to have the same exact price action by any means, but it just kind of gives you a little bit of a sense. You can see this one topped on week 7, declined for 10 weeks. This one topped on week 19, declined for about 6 weeks. What about XOP, the expiration names? Again, same kind of idea. We're about 3 weeks in, and you could see a world where we're going to test the 117 area for XOP. What about Exxon? So Exxon looks like it could hold 100, right? Like that would be this level right here. But again, it is in weekly cycle decline. You can see this was the last weekly cycle decline, right? What was the percentage drop for the last weekly cycle decline? Let's actually, from peak to trough. Like you got this bearish candle all the way down, or this, down to that one. So we dropped 23%, give or take, right? And so if we had a similar percentage drop for this one, and again, it's you don't want to assume you're going to get the same thing, whether it's percentage drop or what have you. But this is just like a ballpark. If we dropped 21%, let's call it, that would get us down into the $90 area, $90 range. So it wouldn't be crazy to get down there, and we could still remain relatively bullish, right? Like on higher time frames. And if we look at the monthly chart, do we have we're just getting a little monthly swing high for Exxon. And again, you can see that $90 area is the low from September, so that makes sense structurally. That's the month that we kind of broke out. So you can see a world where we test that level and don't break down and just kind of rebound. What about Phillips 66? So this one looks like it wants to test the $94 area, I want to say. So another $10 down. OIH, I say the 258 area. We're up here at 293. COP. So we're already testing, and I usually look at the previous high. So we're already testing the previous. We're already below the previous high from like the last weekly cycle, and so you could see a world where we're going to try to test that pivot. So down in the $99 area. Wow. So that's like a 20% decline. But I think we probably had a similar decline. Notice how this chart looks a lot like Exxon's. Right. So that was actually a 33% decline last time. Yikes. And obviously it went on to make a higher high. So it recovered it. Devon Energy. So Devon's decline last weekly cycle was, and I pointed out this is definitely one of the weaker names. Yikes, it dropped 37%. So far from peak to trough, we've only dropped about 18%. So if we did something kind of similar, that might take us to like the $56 area, which actually makes sense structurally for the chart. But again, I think the key here is that these are all relatively early. In the case of Devon, we've actually just been consolidating inside the range of this big doji red weekly candle. We're just starting to break down. So the lower end of that range is $66.55. And I do have a separate video specifically about Devon, which you'll see a link in the description, and also an option at the end of this video to watch that. But if we break down below that $66 area, that opens us up to, the low 60s, and then, potentially even the mid 50s. So that's Devon. Marathon and oil. So that one, wow. We could see a world where we hold 27.90-ish and change, right? Let's just see what the last decline was, just for level setting. This is definitely one of the more volatile names. Yikes. Yeah, there you go. So we declined 41%. So far, and again, there's no reason to think the declines will be exactly the same or even similar. It's just a frame of reference. So far we've dropped about 15%. Let's say we just got to 20, right? That would take us down to like the $27, 26.5. If we got down to more like 30, which would make sense a lot, which would make a lot of sense structurally, like we just kind of take out this rally here, that would get us down to around like 24. So that's that. And you think about, we have time to fall again, probably another 6 or 7 weeks of decline, given where we are in the weekly cycle, where we topped out. Because this weekly cycle didn't drop for that many weeks, but we also were already pretty late in the weekly cycle. So we had already rallied a lot So in this case, we're topping relatively early. And finally, Chevron. So Chevron looks like it has a date with this area. Should stick out to you. And if we can't maintain, so call it broadly the 167 area. And if we can't hold above that, then we have a date with like the 150s probably. In this case, it's only been 3 weeks of decline so far. So again, easily another couple months of decline for these names. They all have their different levels, but it's a similar kind of process. And the last thing I'll call out, we focused on weekly charts, and we looked at the monthly as well. What you want to keep in mind is that almost all of these names are actually this is actually a daily cycle decline right now. So for Chevron, for instance, it rallied, right? It made a daily cycle high on day 35, and right now it's day 49. So we would actually expect a daily cycle low soon. The expectation is that we would have just a feeble bounce from that. That's what we're going to want to watch for. Okay, so that's important because it means, we're, as part of the weekly cycle decline, we're going to get a daily cycle bounce along the way. So you want to be aware of that because we're already at day 49 here for Chevron, for instance. Let's go to the XLE since that's an ETF, so things will probably follow a similar trajectory to that, you would think, right? So we had our high on day, what is that? Day 35. So same, that's not surprising. And then we have this low here on day 40. So it's also possible that this was a daily cycle low and this was just a really feeble daily cycle bounce. So we're gonna watch that. I'll definitely provide updates. So this is day 49 for XLE as well. So we're gonna want to see the character of that daily cycle bounce because that's the way it would work. If we are indeed in weekly cycle decline, which we suspect that we are, we'll get the daily cycle bounce. It'll just be left translated. It'll be similar to what we're seeing in oil, really, right? Like you see how oil just can't get off the mat. It had a little daily cycle low, and this is the rally that it was able to produce, right? Just very feeble, pretty much nothing. So really, really pivotal time. A lot of people have been asking, why are energy names still going up while oil is going down? Well, this is your time potentially if you wanted to go short, not blindly shorting an uptrend, but you actually have weakness clear on the charts now, right? On these weekly charts. Exciting times. We will definitely be keeping up to date on this channel about that and making sure that you're clear on all the levels. I will say OIH is the strongest of all these. Notice, one of these is not like the other. What do you notice from here? It should grab your eye. We haven't made a new weekly low yet for OIH. That's a move below 288, right? And we're up here at 293. I suspect that we will. It's going to get dragged down with the rest of the sector. This is going to become a lower, you have these lower highs here, boom, boom. But that's important, right? On the rebound, it tells you OIH is probably one of the stronger horses you want to bet on, if you will. So we will leave it at that. Again, energy names are under pressure. We actually have a short signal here, and we're going to see the character of this decline again, especially as we get a daily cycle bounce soon for most of these names. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you for watching.